believe this presentation takes right around 30 minutes. And as Carrie said, if you can put your questions or your comments into the Zoom chat area, that would be awesome. Mid-presentation, we will have a contest to see who can be the first to identify a butterfly correctly. So if you have your Zoom chat option ready for that, I will work on sharing my screen here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my video off because I tend to distract myself. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you can see that screen, if it looks right. Yay, okay. I called myself the beginner wild one because I am just starting to learn all about growing native plants. I'm here with my four-legged family at the Prairie Learning Center because I have a lot to learn. I hope by being a beginner native gardener myself, I can make nature gardening less intimidating and more approachable, as so many of you people in Wild Ones are super educated and familiar with all things native. Many of you are familiar with Doug Tellemy's Homegrown National Park concept. Doug states that if we convert 50% of our personal spaces, such as lawns and dead zones, into native plantings, Homegrown National Park would be larger than the Everglades, Yellowstone, Yosemite, Grand Teton, Canyonlands, Mount Rainier, North Cascades, Badlands, Olympic, Sequoia, Grand Canyon, Denali, and Great Smoky National Parks. Combined. Bigger than all these combined. So this article appeared in our Sioux City Journal and sparked my interest in starting a Siouxland Homegrown National Park project. So Grow Wild with us sprouted. This new local program encourages the connection of nature, neighbors, and neighborhoods. We would love to connect each person in their own style to their own outdoor environment. Grow Wild would promote viewing outdoor spaces with an eye towards creating spaces that support both people and the wild in a fun, positive, learn, and laugh a lot style. Grow No Harm would be the overall easy to understand concept. So these are the 4 areas that we're going to look at today. And these will just kind of help showcase examples of different areas and different styles of gardening. The overall purpose would be to have each person confidently start small and think big in their own spaces. The areas we develop through Grow Wild will each be a teaching and practice platform for anyone who wants to learn more about nature gardening and find their own personal approach to their unique situation. First up is probably familiar to some of you, the Flower House. We launched this pilot project July 29th of 2020, and the goal of this pilot project is to be citizen scientists right here in urban Siouxland and see what works. The goal is to change this lawn environment to a beautiful cottage garden setting using native plants at the 70% rate. The goals are life, color, joy, fun, and having this family fall in love with their outdoor space. This neighboring yard showcases the way we hope to have the front of the flower house appear by next fall. The 5-year goal for this project would be to have the front of the flower house go from this to this. You can see in this internet example that there are plant markers, and of course we would want to add our Grow Wild signage, along with some educational materials that people can take. We would also like to host some on-site tours and classes throughout that 5-year time span. You can see there's a beautiful seating area here at the top of the slope in this example of our goal, which really defines this as a garden created on purpose to support people in the wild. The 30% could include the Grow No Harm concept by adding some non-native, non-invasive plants and food. So here you see Mercedes and I planting the very first pilot project plant, a coral honeysuckle. We put a little bunny protection over the top of this plant, and so far so good. It is a non-invasive native plant. It is suitable for gardens in urban areas locally. And you can easily see why we picked this plant when you see Mercedes' business card and see how closely the coral honeysuckle exactly matches her logo. And then we started playing in the front yard. This is called sheet mulching, which many of you are probably familiar with, but it's a no dig, no chemical method. We laid down a hose in the shape we wanted, And if you're doing this process, you can either leave that hose in place or you can spray paint or use marking chalk to outline the shape you want onto the lawn. Next, we added cardboard in the shape we chose. And then we used a mulch called soil pep, which is Mercedes' choice of mulch, to cover the cardboard 2 to 4 inches deep. You can do this with soil or compost as well. Then water thoroughly and wait. You can overwinter this process and let nature water it for several months, or you can make sure it gets at least 2 inches of water a week for 2 to 3 months. Many people add a bird bath, rock, or garden sculpture to their new garden areas to make them really look great while waiting to be planted. In spring, you can pull back that mulch and plant right through the cardboard layer, which is usually starting to turn into mulch itself by then. Lasagna garden prep is slightly different. Lasagna garden prep is when you add both 2 to 4 inches of soil or compost to the top, and then add your mulch, creating the lasagna layers. It works much more quickly. You can actually plant that lasagna garden method right away by cutting right through the cardboard. Growing pains. So we started thinking about the start small, think big concept with the front lawn and got a little ahead of ourselves. We laid out a small butterfly garden concept on the flat part of the lawn above the slope. And over the next 2 days, realized that from the street, it looked ridiculous. And we nicknamed it the Tiny Lawn Pimple. Needless to say, we laughed a lot. And after trying several different things to make it work, we gave up and picked it up. The beauty of the sheet mulching is that for the first couple of weeks, you can just pick up and save the supplies without any harm to the existing vegetation. You can see right over here, this is where it actually was 2 days later. We just put it in the Prairie mobile and took it away. In the backyard, we added this gorgeous and inexpensive trellis over the back gate. And then in this corner, we added some native arborvitae for a shelter belt and installed an urban birdie and bug B&B. You can see 12-year-old Kale, who's actually now 13, adding yard debris to the birdie and bug bed and breakfast. For this project, we used 2 cinder blocks, non-treated board, yard debris and branches, which you can continue to add as it appears in your yard, and some recycled aggressive red cedar branches for decorating and providing some additional shelter. At another site, the Agape Garden, Jeannie is using recycled Christmas trees for her shelter belt and decor. Other ideas are rocks, piles of sticks, whatever you can find that suits your style and gives you a neat and tidy appearance. Remember to visit this spot after a snowfall to see how many tracks you can find. It is amazing the life these support over time as they deteriorate. They create bug and bird food and shelter naturally from your own yard cleanup. Continuing the backyard. For backyard edging, we used trees that were cut down to restore a prairie in Crofton, Nebraska. We cut 1-foot lengths, used a toboggan to transport these to the backyard, put them flat to evaluate how many we would need, and we're planning on using a cordless drill to attach strips of wood with screws onto the back to stabilize them in an upright position. We tried tying them with jute string, but it just created a domino effect. It did not work at all. So needless to say, we're looking for a better way to stabilize these using completely natural biodegradable products to get away from the screws. So if any of you have any ideas, I would love to hear them. The Yard Service, which stopped treating the lawn with chemicals in July, started recycling their lawn clippings and leaves by placing them between the edging here and the chain link fence for a natural mulch and compost. And then it snowed. Luckily, that thick snow did not freeze the ground underneath, so we planted right through this thick mulch when our shrubs arrived from the State Forest Nursery in Ames, Iowa. We do have catalogs from the nursery if you would like one, or you can go online to the nursery as well to see what they have. So what did we plant? 9 bark behind this garden shed. Aronia berry directly in front of where the birdie and bug B&B is on an angle. Wild grapevines all along this back fence, and I think we can train those to grow over that trellis, and they can actually go into this alleyway behind the yard, and we can just end up mowing or chopping them if they get a little too rambunctious. And then we put elderberry along this left side wall. There's a steep concrete wall and a concrete driveway next to that elderberry, so hopefully that will keep it a little bit in control from going over to the neighbors' yards. All of these shrubs are used by Mercedes in her nature-inspired floral designs, which should help with the editing of all that extra growth. Our next site is a Friends of Stone Park pocket prairie. It's a rectangle bordered on Memorial Drive on one side and Talbot Road split on the other two sides. The property is owned by Sioux City, and a waiver renewal must be filed each year through the city engineer, along with a right-of-way waiver from Mid-American Energy. The city actually delivered the paperwork, picked it up, and re-delivered the approved signed paperwork. They were so excited about this project and stated, and I quote, "It is so nice to see Siouxlanders take pride in making their tax-owned public sites more beautiful," unquote. Another hilarious and somewhat edited for G rating city comment was, "Thank goodness, hauling our mowers out there is a giant pain, ... Friends of Stone Park are looking forward to doing whole projects based solely on this site for prairie restoration and reconstruction education. It is highly visible, very safe, and small enough to easily maintain. Les Hills Wildlands gifted the native prairie sign. Also, in Iowa, this yucca on site is found only in the Les Hills. Here are some of the committee that are signed on to that pocket prairie project. And some of the on-site education could include prescribed burns spearheaded by Jake, the park ranger, mowing strips for citizen science comparison to the burn areas, native seed collection, native plant ID, and one class was already hosted by Dr. Brian Hazlitt from Briarcliff College, overseeding, invasive control, creating buffer zones for parks, and the healing power of pocket prairies. Next, we move on to the Yanni Gardens at Guaranty Roofing. This site was originally selected to be a few potted native plants for pollinators in front of the office as a concrete jungle example of how anyone, anywhere can add native habitat. However, on site were abandoned garden beds with a retaining wall edging and peat gravel mulch, overrun at the time with a few native plants and lots of truly invasive weeds and brush. Madison and I found one plant on either side of this sidewalk that Diane ID'd as a Virginia creeper, which gave us a key feature to reconstruct these gardens to support nature. So we started doing some cleanup. We removed and leveled all the edging, and we carefully kept this milky weed over here and that creeper that I showed you before. And here are the side gardens. The first photo is a before, which is actually an after picture of the brush removal. During, we just used a potato fork to wedge out the sunken edging, and the last photo is the after with the leveled edging. And next we have Lewis during the snowstorm building a trellis for the creeper, and then you see the trellis actually installed outdoors. The last photo is our vision and dream for this trellis for 1 year from now, with native and support plants for birds and pollinators installed. On to the next site, the wild mess in progress. This is a reclaimed lawn area in the center of a circular drive on my property. And you can see us doing the sheet mulching process in preparation for some test gardens in spring of 2021. Ideas for classes and test gardens so far are a fragrance garden, a tall native plant garden, a low growing garden, a butterfly and bee starter garden, a class on building small water features, a class on make and take your own concrete leaves, and any ideas you would like to share for additional tiny test gardens or classes are welcomed. A small water feature was added next to an Iowa hydrant, which we can leave at a slow drip for 3 seasons. We added native plants from the Les Hills Spring Plant Sale, and also overseeded that area with annual zinnias, sweet alyssum, and cleome for quick color and cover while the natives grew. Monarch caterpillars were all over the Monarch's Delight, AKA butterfly weed, and we saw many kinds of butterflies and bees, and also a hummingbird on the cardinal flower this very first season. And in the photo on the far right, The first person to correctly identify this butterfly and put the correct name in the chat box will win a prize, which I'll show you at the end of the presentation. This excludes anyone who has already ID'd this butterfly, which was actually confirmed by Doug Tellemy. So take a good look and type in your thoughts for butterfly ID, and we will name the winner at the end of the presentation. And I'll just take a moment to give everybody a chance to type in their guess till we get to the next slide. Okay.
While we're taking that minute, what plant is this butterfly on?
It is just a zinnia, and literally I threw, it's one of the zinnias from Seed Saver Exchange, a heritage one. Yeah, and it was just crazy busy. Okay, on to our next slide. We're also doing several areas of prairie restoration on Talbot Road, which I call the once and future prairie. We're removing aggressive red cedar, invasives like buckthorn and bush honeysuckle, repurposing all those cut invasives as a habitat heap, or repurposing these as wreaths and decorations. And on the subject of wreaths, Les Hills Wild Ones are planning to have a native wreath making contest in the fall of 2021. And now for something completely different. On October 28th, Homegrown National Park planned a soft launch of their national program website, but it was anything but soft. It quickly generated a lot of interest. The first weekend, it had over 6,000 hits. Here you can see Mercedes with her very first native planting on the homepage. And if you go over to the partners page, you can see the Grow Wild With Us current logo. Homegrown National Park is also on most social media platforms, and here you can see Kale working on the autumn olive at the Wild Mess in Progress on their homepage Instagram feed. And then on the actual Instagram post, you can see 12-year-old versus invasive autumn olive tree. The 12-year-old wins. And in the more, if you clicked on that, was an educational blurb about why autumn olives need to be managed as an invasive species. So they're adding education to their Instagram posts, which I really like. Okay, here is a super soft launch of Grow Wild With Us at the Seed Exchange. And I think Carrie still has seeds available for either pickup or delivery. So if anybody would like some seeds, just let us know.
Yes, please.
And for those of you who don't already know Tom and Sherry, they are a talented and involved couple with a great sense of humor who have an absolutely beautiful garden in Morningside, which we hope to have on a Morningside garden tour sometime in 2021. They're both studying under the Master Gardener program, and I am so fortunate to have them on the Grow Wild With Us steering committee. And I'm hoping to have them host a class on building and decorating a compost complex. Maybe we should add a compost beautifying class next year as well. I want to thank you, Tom and Sherry, for all that you do and all that you will be doing in the coming years. Also, if you already don't know Sarah, who created the Grow Wild sign, I am continuously astounded that Sarah took my sketch on the far left, worked with so many changes, with so many different people with differing ideas, that I have literally a 1-inch thick folder of changes. And Sarah continues to cheerfully and skillfully implement ever more changes in this developing logo. Sarah is also our on-site photographer for the Grow Wild projects. Sarah, I cannot thank you enough for all that you are doing. Okay, on to some vocabulary specific to Grow Wild and specific ways that you personally can help in as little as 5 minutes. These will be listed on our greatly improved website, and thank you, Elisa, for your hours of hard work. Okay, if you have expertise, you can share your knowledge of your past experiences. If you're an experienced gardener, you can give on-site suggestions or ideas for starter gardens. You could help with class hosting, hosting ideas. You could be a class host. You could be a make this space better volunteer. You could be an awkward pause volunteer for a 5-minute pickup. You can add lots of word of mouth encouragement for other people to start growing wild. You can encourage others to add some wild to an already existing garden. You could donate created or extra unwanted items for function and beauty, such as bird baths, rocks, sculptures, garden tools, anything. You could donate extra native plants or seeds. You could be a citizen scientist in your own garden. You could come help on a play date in one of the mini gardens in Zooland. You could supply an idea for a kids project. You could supply extra gardening books towards our lending library. You could supply seeds for a native seed library. You could be the host for the seed library. You could take photos and text them to me for the Wild Wednesday newsletter, which is posted on the website. And you can submit sites and ideas for the Wild Wednesday. You can laugh and you can learn. And most of all, you can become one of the quote unquote us and grow wild with us. I cannot wait to see what we all grow together. Thank you all so much. And Carrie, did you happen to get a correct answer to the butterfly identification?
Well, I don't know because I don't know the answer. Let's see,
So,
giant swallowtail.
yeah, a giant
Correct.
swallowtail. And this is interesting because Diane ID'd this correctly right away. And then I plugged it into an internet source, which will remain unnamed. And it was ID'd incorrectly as an anise black swallowtail. And Doug said, nope, Diane is right. It's the giant swallowtail. And I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that name.
Well, we had two people respond swallowtail, so they get points, but Dawn Snyder was specific when she said giant swallowtail. So I think
Yay, Dawn.
as usual.
Good, Dawn. Okay, can you guys see me now? Okay, Dawn, you win this pillow. I don't know if you guys can see that okay. And it is our state bird and our most recognized prairie flower, apparently. And then I do want to just share one more slide that Carrie, I think Carrie, this is the one you were looking for.
I think that could be it.
Okay, so this is just a rough idea, very, very rough idea. I don't know why I'm drawing on the screen there, but
I think
it
might be. Go ahead. We're close to the end. So
no, so it's just a rough idea of where anyone anywhere could fit into their style of how they might fit into this, including, and I just want to point this out, if you don't want to do anything at all, you know, in the Siouxland area, I don't want to make any judgments. So I'm just going to assume and recommend that people like that and all of us just donate to a nature preserve if they don't want to make any changes whatsoever in their lifestyle. And then we just don't even have to think about that when we see a lawn. We'll just assume they donated something and that's that. Okay, I think that is my presentation. So I'm going to turn off my slide share. And did we get any, let's see, stop share.
No questions. I think that you just kept everybody so captivated with what you were saying and what you were going to say next that nobody wanted to stop and ask a question. But we will take questions now.
Awesome.